This is going to be good because, I mean, there's a lot of American gun owners. I mean, there's got to be at least 100 million. At least. I think that probably is a bit low. Let's say 120 million gun owners. Each person, let's say, owns, on average, 2 guns. So we're talking about 240 million guns and billions of rounds of ammo going up against the entirety of Europe. We're talking about the oldest militaries, or some of the oldest militaries in the world, some of the most experienced militaries in the world, all the weaponry, all the modern weaponry that you could expect, organized units. Surely the Europe would win this, right? Because it depends. I don't think you can include the army in terms of US gun owners. I'm just talking about civilians. And yes, you will have some veterans who have military experience, but would just civilians have the tactical know-how to fend off the entirety of Europe? I just can't see how that would be possible. I just can't see it. Yes, I know terrain plays a factor if Europe is trying to invade, but surely the combined experience, knowledge, war know-how of the Europeans would overwhelm the US. No?
About 500 million privately owned firearms sitting in homes across the United States. They're up against every country in Europe, all of it, all at once. EU or not, NATO or not, allies or not. Russia's on the list, and so is Ukraine. The rules of this sandbox? No US government, no US military. The only people defending the country are civilians who already legally own a gun. 3 of these countries have nuclear weapons, the UK, France, and Russia. All 3 stay locked up. And everyone here fights on the same side, no matter what's actually happening between any of them right now in the
So we're saying no nukes then, no nukes. Okay.
real world. Let's go. The Defenders. With around 100 million gun owners in America, that alone would hypothetically make it the largest army or militia in the world by far. And a lot of them are veterans, somewhere around 8 to 9 million, who already know how to move under fire and hold a position. Communication doesn't go down with the first strike either. Roughly 775,000 Americans have a ham radio license, more than Germany, France, Italy, and the UK combined.
Wow.
Several times over. Cut the internet and take down the cell towers, and that network just keeps going, running on batteries and car engines with nothing for an invading air force to actually target.
But hang on a minute, like, could the Europeans not just jam the radios? Like, surely the technology exists to jam radio signals. Then that must exist by now.
What's sitting in American hands goes well past rifles. AR-15s and AK pattern rifles, hunting rifles, and enough ammunition in home closets to count in the billions of rounds. Close to 180,000 legally registered machine guns are already in private hands.
Wow.
Thousands of demilitarized
Oh my
Humvees
God.
from military auctions. No weapons, but the truck still runs and still works off-road. And we can't forget the almighty redneck engineering. Think armored pickup trucks with mounted guns, traps, homemade weapons, and more.
Yeah, but I mean, putting a 50 cal on a truck, you know, how's that going to fare against an ICBM or something like that, you know?
There's a small number of collectors who've actually gone through the legal process to own a real tank with a working cannon. The realistic limit is still a 50 caliber rifle. It can disable a truck, a radar dish, or a helicopter from a mile away. There are more than 200,000 small private planes registered in the country too, roughly half the entire world's general aviation fleet. Crop dusters, bush planes, aircraft that already know the back roads better than any satellite could. And one state here matters more than the map suggests: Alaska. Hold that thought. The invaders. Geographic Europe without a single country missing is enormous, something like 3.5 million active troops once Russia and Ukraine are counted in. More tanks on the continent than the US has ever fielded at once. The UK and France are the only 2 with full-scale fleet carriers, the Queen Elizabeth and the Charles de Gaulle, and the only 2 who've actually put troops ashore somewhere far from home in living memory. French Mistral-class ships, built to open up on a beach and drive tanks straight off the back, can land a tank battalion and 900 troops in a single trip. British Bay-class ships do the same job on a smaller scale. Germany supplies the armor backbone, hundreds of Leopard 2 tanks, either built there or trained and organized the German way across half the continent. Poland's building one of the most modern armies in Europe, mixing Leopards with a huge new order of South Korean K2 tanks and American Abrams. Italy, Spain, the Netherlands, and Turkey all bring their own landing ships and Marines, even if none of them can cross an ocean alone. Then there's Russia, the single biggest army in this fight by a wide margin.
But hasn't that army been significantly weakened because of the war in Ukraine? Like, yeah, they had the biggest army in Europe, but as far as I'm aware, they've lost hundreds of thousands of men, haven't they?
Over 1 million active troops and thousands of tanks in storage, despite 3 years of losing them in Ukraine. Its navy was never built to cross an ocean, though. Its landing ships are a Black Sea and Baltic force, and a good chunk of what they had is already sitting on the sea floor after fighting Ukraine. Ukraine's on the roster too, fighting alongside the country it's actually been at war with for years. That's the sandbox rule. Everyone here cooperates. Its infantry and drone crews are as battle-tested as anyone on this list. It just has no way to get any of them across the Atlantic on its own. Everyone else, the Nordics, Central Europe, the Baltics, the Balkans, Greece, fills in the rest. Small.
And one thing, couldn't the Europeans, like with their satellites that are up in the air, just do recon and see where the US would be amassing, like where the civilians would be amassing a lot of their weaponry, like a lot of the redneck weaponry that was discussed? Could they not just do recon to see where a lot of it is being amassed, what borders and stuff, and just bomb them? Like, couldn't they do that, or is that not allowed?
All sharp, well-armed light infantry with nowhere near the ships or planes to move their own heavy gear overseas. The fight. The biggest challenge for the attackers? There's no land bridge anywhere. No country on this list actually touches the US. So every single one of them has to cross open ocean to get here. Except maybe one. Look at a map, and Russia seems to have a shortcut.
Yes. Oh yeah. Russia and the US are really, there's a point I think that where they're like, is it 10 miles apart or something? Or 50 miles?
At the Bering Strait, Alaska and Russia sit about 55 miles apart.
50
closer
miles,
than some rivers separate countries. But it isn't a shortcut. There's nothing to land on. No port or airfield worth taking. And the coastal towns closest to Russia aren't even connected by road to the rest of Alaska in the first place. Whatever gets ashore is stuck on frozen tundra before it ever reaches a road at all. The only way off that peninsula and into the country is the Alaska Highway, a single 2-lane road running 1,400 miles through Canadian wilderness before it hits a single major American city. One road that a handful of guys with rifles could shut down in an afternoon. Russia doesn't even keep real landing ships anywhere near there.
I think one thing that hasn't been discussed in this video, though, is could Europe not theoretically, obviously this would never happen, guys. The US and Europe are the closest of allies. This would never happen. But theoretically, if this was to happen, could Europe not launch ICBMs at the dense population centers and just significantly weaken the US before it tries to invade? Like, what's stopping Europe just doing that so that when they then invade, there's way less civilians that they have to combat?
The short way isn't a way at all. So it's the Atlantic, the long way, for everyone. Add up every ship in Europe actually built to land troops and tanks on a beach, French ones, British, Italian, Spanish, Dutch, and a single realistic wave tops out at around 10 to 15,000 troops with light armor. That's the whole opening move. Airlift doesn't fix it. Every troop transport plane in Europe combined, mainly the A400M and C-17, can move people fast, but almost none of it can carry a tank. Only the C-17 manages that, and there are just 11 of those on the entire continent. 8 flown by the UK, 3 more shared by a NATO airlift unit based in Hungary. And a transport plane needs a secured runway waiting on the other end, which nobody has without already winning a fight for one first. Civilian airliners could move a lot of people fast, and that's real, not a stretch. The US did exactly this with its own airlines during the Gulf War. But airliners can't carry a tank, and they need that same secured runway everyone else needs. It solves headcount, it solves nothing else. For scale, the UK's 1982 task force to the Falklands, a war fought over a handful of remote islands near Argentina, about as far from home as Britain could get, sailed 8,000 miles and took weeks just to land one reinforced brigade against islands smaller than most American counties. D-Day needed 20,000 tons of supplies delivered every day just to keep moving. across 33 miles of water with a friendly country waiting right next door. An Atlantic crossing is over 100 times that distance, with nothing waiting on the other end at all. Realistic opening wave? Somewhere around 80,000 to 100,000 troops total, not millions. Every one of them needs fuel, ammo, and replacements shipped back across the same ocean
And food.
they just crossed. The landing zone is the East Coast, closest to Europe, aimed at a handful of ports big enough to unload real equipment.
Yeah, from London to New York, I think that's about a 7.5 hour flight. But a carrier would probably take a lot longer, I imagine.
New York, Norfolk, Boston, Baltimore. Heavy gear needs a working crane and an open dock, not a beach. And an unarmored crane sitting out in the open is a lot easier to hit than a soldier dug into a tree line. None of this comes as a surprise. Commercial satellites track a buildup this size from orbit weeks before the first ship leaves port. So the real fight isn't Europe against every gun owner in the country. It's 80,000 to 100,000 invaders against a few 100,000 defenders. On ground, the defenders already know, backed by a comms network, Europe can't jam and can't even find.
So Europe can't jam it. I'm surprised. I don't know. I'm sure the technology exists to jam ham radio, because ham radio's been around for decades now.
Europe has the advantage on the open field. Better armor, real air cover, the real command structure, but two problems. Most of America doesn't look like an open field, and they'd still need to get all that gear across the pond first. It's close to the same playbook that's chewed through armored columns in Ukraine for years. Cheap drones and small anti-armor teams working a force that's stuck funneling down a handful of routes. Millions of Americans already fly hobby drones for fun. Watching a convoy isn't a new skill for most of them. There's no single headquarters to knock out on the defender side either. Thousands of small local groups coordinating over a radio network built by hobbyists that doesn't run through any tower Europe can hit from the air. Take out one group and the next county over doesn't even hear about it in time to matter.
Like, going back, I don't want to sound like a broken record, and obviously, just to say it again, this would never happen. But if Europe were to launch a barrage of missiles at the densely populated centers in the US, like, the morale, you would think that the morale would be so damaged by that, because the civilians, the gun owners in America would have no idea when the missiles were coming. I mean, maybe there's technology that can kind of tell you as it's approaching, but they'd have no idea where they're coming from, where they're going to hit next. At that point, the organization structure would probably fray quite a lot, because people would just start panicking, right? I would imagine that would be one of the first things done before Europe even lands men, on the coast.
Every mile inland makes the invaders' problem worse too, because their entire supply chain runs backward across an ocean. Americans never leave their own. The verdict? Chance of U.S. gun owners repelling the attempted foothold at least 70%. Higher than the number we gave NATO, since this invasion never gets a land bridge like Canada to lean on. Every approach here runs into the same wall, an ocean, with nothing waiting on the other side. Only years of investment in real sea lift would change that math, and nobody's building it right now. If you want to see the invaders get an actual...
Very interesting. I guess the objective of this conflict would then determine what strategies would be used. If the main objective was just to take the land, then I think things like missiles, like long-range missiles, comes into it. If it's just like defeating the enemy, as in like getting the enemy to surrender, then I think maybe this scenario is a lot more realistic, because obviously you don't want to just take out all the population or huge chunks of the population. You're just trying to get them to yield. But then again, looking at what the US did to Japan with the nukes, like sometimes just a couple of really heavy strikes, we're talking about the nuclear strikes, can get an enemy to fold quite quickly, because they're like, oh my God, if they do that again and again and again, we're done out here. So I would imagine like missiles, like, I'm surprised you didn't mention that, because with the radars up in the air and the satellites, Europe would see where people are amassing, wouldn't they? They'd see where a lot of the vehicles that were being engineered, you know, that the redneck engineering were amassing, and they'd be able to just take those out. Like, they'd just be able to take those out. And, you know, the fear and the confusion and the worry that would just cause, I think, that command structure of the US civilians to fracture. You know, it would just, and then it's just chaos, isn't it? It's not an organized defense at that point. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. And if you did, thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. And check out this video linked right here and hit the join button below. See you there.